gonna make a game from scratch in just 5 months, with no coding experience. 2 years ago, I tried making a game and I completely failed. I let scope creep get out of control, had no idea how to code, couldn't make the art look good. Eventually, I just quit. But this time is different. I have a plan, I made a detailed spreadsheet, and I took 5 months off work to make this game. So it's go big or go home. Now let me show you how this all started. Back in 2023, I tried making a 2D Metroidvania. I was Googling everything, every step of the way. After 3 months of working on the game, I barely had 5 minutes of gameplay, and the list of features and ideas just kept growing. The stress of never finishing the game got to me, and I gave up. Fast forward 2 years later, and my motivation is back. Games like Vampire Survivors, Risk of Rain 2, and most recently, Megabonk reminded me why I wanted to make games in the first place. I love build variety in games, and fighting off hordes of enemies is just a ton of fun. So this time, I'm building a Survivor Light, and this is my first month of game dev. The first week was mostly about laying the foundations. I created a basic test character, a super simple test level, and honestly, most of my time went into watching a bunch of tutorials. I followed a tutorial by Playable Workshop to get myself started, just to understand how things actually work in the Godot engine. From that, I got character movement, basic physics, a functional camera, and something that actually felt kinda playable. These dudes were super cool, and the tutorial was easy to follow, so huge thanks to these guys for getting this project started smoothly. After the movement felt pretty solid, I implemented a basic enemy, then I built a spawner so they could start swarming the player. And by I mean I told ChatGPT to make me an enemy spawner, so I could just copy paste it into my game while watching YouTube videos. That's coding 101 in 2025, folks. Once that was in, I learned about resources, which were kind of perfect for storing character stats and weapon stats, because I really didn't want everything coded into one script from the start. Eventually, I started to get into the fun stuff. I tested attacking enemies with projectiles, and they actually died. But then I started running into really bad performance issues, like really bad. It only took less than 100 enemies on screen to tank the frame rate. And if I wanted upwards of 1,000 enemies on screen, it was obvious I needed to rethink how they worked. So I basically told ChatGPT that they were wrong and they have no idea what they are doing. And that's when they came up with a spatial grid. I have no idea what it is, but it worked. Performance instantly got way better, and it also let me change how enemies behave. Instead of beelining straight at the player, they now behaved in a more tactical swarm mentality, which was pretty cool. Now, I didn't want to burn out on coding, so towards the end of the week, I switched gears and jumped into Blender. This was my first attempt at using Blender and making a character, and my initial models were pretty terrible. But after a lot of practice, I ended the week with this. This is my first playable character, Juno, a cyber samurai. And honestly, I'm really happy with how he turned out. In the second week, coding mostly took a backseat because I spent almost all of my time watching Blender tutorials and working on creating my second character, Warden. And there was a lot of bad moments. I messed up the modeling, I messed up the rigging, I messed up the animations, and I definitely messed up the texturing. I ended up completely retexturing Warden 3 times in Substance Painter. At one point, I finally thought I was done, tried to export the character, and realized I somehow had 171 textures. So yeah, that's not good. But after fighting through all of that, I actually learned how to properly rig and animate my characters. Doing the proper textures, however, is going to have to wait. Hey, if you're enjoying the video so far and want to support my game dev journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you would like to see added to the game. Let's get back into the video. Near the end of the week, I jumped back into coding and I hit some pretty insane milestones. I implemented experience, leveling, and a basic damage system. I added wave-based spawning and started scaling enemy difficulty over time, so the game actually started to feel like a game now. I should also mention I'm not some coding genius. I actually have no idea what I'm doing, I use ChatGPT to basically do all the coding work, and I'm just learning how to send really good prompts to ensure it actually implements what I want. To be honest, once you start understanding the mechanics of how things work in a game engine, that's when ChatGPT becomes super useful because you know what you want and how to ask for it in code. Now, I also put together a simple character selection screen. It's nothing fancy, but it lets me quickly test different characters and weapons. I did make one big design change this week though. I ended up removing the tactical swarm AI that I implemented earlier. It looked cool, but in practice, the enemies spent more time running away from the player, which just felt boring to play. One thing I'm really starting to realize is that most of my development time is usually spent learning the really basic stuff, like how to make my own simple gradient, which took 3 hours to figure out. 3 hours. By the end of week 2, I've got playable systems and real characters that I actually designed myself. And speaking about playable systems, week 3 was all about systems, and honestly, a lot of rethinking things I thought were already finished. I spent a big chunk of the week reworking the upgrade system. I added things like health regen, armor, EXP increase, and weapon-specific upgrade cards, all built in a way that lets me quickly add new upgrades with my resource data. I also cleaned up the UI so it actually shows what you have during your run, like your health bar and the augments you've picked so far. Partway through the week, I made a design change. I renamed augments to perks and decided to save augments for later as a way to evolve weapons. And oh god, now that I'm editing this right now, I think that's called scope creep. I'm sure it'll be fine, right? Once perks and weapon upgrades started feeling decent, I added the ability to unlock new weapons during a run, which immediately made things feel more fun. But around this point, I ran into a big problem. Cooldown and attack speed were kind of fighting each other. So I made the call to completely remove cooldown from the game and just use attack speed for everything. Unfortunately, cooldown was a pretty large part of my game at this point, so that decision alone took about 4 hours to undo and rebalance everything around attack speed. And yeah, at this point, the idea of balancing all of this was starting to stress me out, because if it took that long at this small of a scale, later on, that could be trouble. So I asked ChatGPT for a system to help me test out upgrades and balancing, and it suggested something that actually worked insanely well: debug tools. Essentially, it created a script that allowed me to add shortcuts to instantly level up and max perks with hotkeys, and that alone made testing and balancing way easier. I also tried making an actual level this week, and I can already tell some of you are watching this and like cringing because I'm just pulling all the vertices around in Blender, but I don't even care. I'm just trying to figure this out. I have a feeling creating a level is probably going to be the hardest thing to do during this development. Going into the 4th week, I started to run into some insane performance issues again with the enemies on screen. Eventually, I stripped enemies down to a simple node 3D with 0 physics, and that finally solved it. Now I can have like 1,000 enemies on screen with no lag, but they don't really collide with anything, they're just kind of floating. So I know this is going to be an issue later down the road. After that, I added scaling difficulty over time, fixed spawning so enemies appear around the player, and created my first actual enemy in Blender, which I'm really proud of, by the way. He's called the Imp, and this is going to be the starter enemy in my game. I actually had a lot of fun making the Imp, so I decided why not just make another enemy type. And this time I went with something heavier to spawn in after the Imps, the Brute. I wanted the Brute enemy to be beefy, so I made sure to give him a nice juicy belly. I also completely took his hands off and gave him giant spiked maces for hands. I spent a lot of time studying how texturing works in Substance Painter as well, and once I finally got the hang of it, I gave the Imp and Brute some nice hand-painted textures. Once the Brute was done, I brought him into the game and I added him to the enemy spawn pool. At this point, I also implemented elite enemies, added items, and I even added loot bags. I also set up a rarity system, then I went back and polished the UI so everything actually felt readable and satisfying. Towards the end of the week, I finally sat down and built a real prototype map in Godot, which I feel like I probably should have done way earlier on, but oh well. At the same time, I refined the enemy AI so they think about how to reach the player using a nav mesh, instead of just running straight at you. And honestly, it worked really well, right up until I climbed onto a small ledge and the enemies completely broke. They had absolutely no idea how to get to me. So yeah, there's still a lot of work left on that. And that's the end of my first month of game dev. 4 weeks ago, I had no real experience making games, no idea how to code or make 3D art, and now I've got multiple enemies, progression systems, loot, upgrades, and something that's actually playable. It's still rough, it's definitely got a long way to go, and a lot of things are gonna break along the way, but I still feel extremely motivated to finish this game and make sure it's hella fun. In the next few months, there will be a lot more learning, failure, system changes, and things not going the way I want them to. But turning this game into something people can actually enjoy playing is all I really care about. If you're into game development, roguelites, or just watching someone figure this stuff out on their own, I'll be posting regular updates as I keep building my game. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.